Hey, unruly subjects, it's Chenjerai, and I need your help to keep the show going strong. If you love what we do here, consider supporting us by joining our Patreon community. It's the best way to back the show, and you get some incredible benefits in return. Membership starts at just $5 a month. I mean, there's nothing that cheap, at least in New York. And you immediately get ad-free episodes and exclusive premium episodes. That includes interview outtakes and other extras you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. But that's not all. You can access the Unruly chat and polls. When we have a live event, you're gonna get the pre-sale tickets and the merch. Oh my God, the merch. You know the merch is gonna be fly. And you receive invitations to our Q&A live streams and, my favorite, our annual exclusive hangout with me, the producers, and a special guest. So yo, come on people, join the Unruly mob. Visit patreon.com/unrulysubjects. And thank you for making this show possible. Row Home Productions. What's up, Unruly Subjects? Who am I talking to?
Hey, man, this is Percy. What's going on? This is Chenjerai.
Yeah, man, it's me. How you doing, Percy? Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I really like your show. I wanted to talk to you about the midterms. Are you thinking about the midterms?
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about the midterms. I mean, it's important, man. I mean, look at what's at stake, man. We are right now, it feels like we're kind of like moving into full fascism. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I see a lot of these politicians out here with these campaigns. And an election campaign is like, you gotta cook. You know what I mean?
So you're saying like the election campaign is something that you gotta plan it, right? Is that kind of what you mean by cook?
Yeah, you gotta cook, I hope these politicians are cooking, because it doesn't come out of nowhere, brother. Let me ask you a question, Chenjerai. Do you eat fish?
Yeah, I like fish,
When I cook fish, I like to put a little butter in the pan sometimes. And, I put a piece of fish in there, maybe a piece of salmon. Throw like a little pinch of salt on that, let it cook,
Percy, are we talking about the midterm elections?
Definitely, yeah, we're talking about the elections. I'm just saying you got to plan, man, you got to cook it. You don't win out of nowhere, brother.
Okay, I just was, because it sounded like you was, I wasn't sure where we were going.
Do you like broccoli rab? Sometimes I got the salmon going. I like to have a little broccoli rab on the side.
Percy, well, listen, you sound hungry to me, and I'm not sure what you really think about. I mean, do you have a sense of who's going to win or issues you think are important to put on the table?
There's plenty of important issues, I think healthcare is really important. The climate, it's getting hot. This whole planet is cooking right now. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't like climate change, but I do like to bake. I like to bake a nice sweet potato pie. Give me a couple fresh yams. I don't know about you, but I boil my yams first, then I put a little butter in there and,
Well, Percy, it's good talking to you. We may talk about cooking at some point. Maybe you can come back and talk about that. Does that sound good?
Sometimes.
Okay, cool. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. What up, y'all? Yes, Unruly Subjects is back in the building. Oh, yeah. We got something special for y'all this week, you know what I mean? Oh, man. Hope y'all doing all right wherever you are. You know what I'm saying? It's warming up, you know what I mean? About to hop back on the bike in a minute, you know what I mean? Yeah, man. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. Actually, right now, I'm a little bit tired. Yeah. I'm exhausted. I'm bringing it, but I'm struggling. You know what I mean? Because I just got back from Pittsburgh, where we had an amazing event with Crooked Ideas and One Hood. This was called Empire City Live. And so y'all may know that I made a podcast called Empire City. It's about the history of policing. And so this event in Pittsburgh was about connecting this crisis we're dealing with ICE to like the longer history of policing. And so the main guest I got to interview was U.S. Representative Summer Lee. Yeah, man. You know, shout out to Summer Lee, boy. Woo! Just what a powerful individual. So it was great. And I also got to give a big shout out to One Hood. Do y'all know about One Hood in Pittsburgh? They are a sort of really, really dope on the ground group who's been around for over a decade doing like political work, doing media work, teaching, young people media literacy. And yeah, so, I mean, it was just really dope to be in the space with them. So shout out to them. You know what I'm saying? I want to share some stuff from that event. We're probably the first place we're going to share it is going to be on the Patreon. So, you know what I mean? If you definitely want to stay tuned and check over at the Patreon, unrulysubjectspodcast.com to see what we do there. And speaking of Patreon, you know what I mean? Shout out to the Patreon supporters. You know what I mean? We appreciate it. You know what I mean? We building a real community over there. You know what I mean? And we want you to be a part of that. You know what I mean? Listen. This show is independent. So if you want this to keep happening, you want us to keep doing this, support us at Patreon. You know, I recently shared an update over there about just how we're thinking about the show, what we want to build, what we want to add to it, and we want your feedback on that. So definitely go to unrulysubjectspodcast.com. And even if you feel like I can't support financially right at this minute, you can join the Patreon for free. And that will definitely still help because this way we're all connected. You know what I mean? So let's definitely do that. So for today's episode, we're doing something a little different, y'all. We're going to talk to a Brazilian journalist, someone I met in Brazil who reports on all kinds of things. And in a way, you know, our whole episode today is kind of like checking in with the Black diaspora in Brazil. So I can't wait for you to hear that. But before we do that, there's a few things I want to talk about. First, last week's episode was about the machinery of ICE flights, right? How deportation isn't just like a policy. It's actually a whole logistics operation. And for some of these airline companies and private equity companies, it's become like a business model. So Gillian Brackel really broke that down, right? Contracts, routes, that all was really eye-opening to me. But there's a whole other aspect to this, which is how people have been already fighting against this. And I just want to let y'all know there's real progress being made. So last month, one of those airlines, Avelo, agreed to stop flying deportation flights. You know what I'm saying? And this didn't happen just because executives suddenly grew a conscience, right? It happened because people applied pressure, smart pressure, sustained pressure, and it really was about leverage here, right? So we're going to share in our show notes and on our Patreon a piece that laid out how that campaign worked. And I think it's really important because right now, at a time when it feels like none of our strategies are enough, this is kind of like a field guide to show how you could target an institution that's helping to prop up state violence, even when that violence is kind of like, feels like it's invisible, right? I mean, the core idea of these organizers was that deportation infrastructure depends on being invisible. The flights are routed through these regional airports, they're subcontracted, right? And they're meant to be something that you're not even thinking about, right? But the win really came from making sure it was in the light. And they didn't rely on just one magic tactic. It was a mix of different kinds of things: local organizing, national amplification, direct action, political pressure, and boycotts. All those things kind of moving at the same time. And they basically figured out where Avelo was vulnerable, right? And then they really like kind of locked in on that. And I think we're going to start to see more of this based on what I'm hearing in movement circles about how people are going to ramp up pressure. So we'll put that information in the show notes. And I also want to be clear, like, it ain't like we won and we packing it up, right? ICE is still going. People are still being harmed. There's still other contractors and other pressure points we're going to have to figure out. But it does matter to kind of like remove one company out of that chain, even if it's for however long it is. And it weakens the system and shows that, you know, we can win. So really, really important. The second thing I want to mark today is that, as I'm sure you have heard, the Reverend Jesse Jackson has passed. You know, I found out about this, it's like some kind of in the middle of the night a couple of days ago. And it really hit me because it's so hard to summarize Jesse Jackson's influence, right? I mean, it's just, you know, he was in so many parts of the Black liberation struggle and really the struggle for democracy in America, period, right? Which is, you know, that this is what people have to understand about the Black liberation struggle, is that our struggle has transformed this country into something that is more democratic for everybody. And that's what's being repealed right now. But it's hard to capture his influence because it exists in so many people and so much legislation and so much movement work. But I do want to point you to this piece that my friend Joel Anderson wrote. It's kind of like an obituary. He wrote it for the Ringer, and it captures something essential about Jesse Jackson that people sometimes forget, right? He was always laser focused on the fact that the rights he fought for and the rights that he and many others fought for could be taken away, right? He never felt like progress was permanent. And he opens with this moment in this piece at the National Association of Black Journalists where a conversation about voting rights had kind of been moved into the basement. And Jesse Jackson himself felt like that was a metaphor for the fact that folks weren't taking this seriously. But at the time in the room, a lot of people kind of, the way Joel characterized, he says, people kind of felt like, yeah, we hear you, but maybe he was being a little bit, hyperbolic or alarmist. And, maybe that had to be something, he's like people of his generation, maybe a little hyped. Of course, right now, right, when you see how the Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act and all the attacks on voting rights and whatever it might be getting ready to occur in the next few elections, you realize like, oh no, he was actually, we needed more of us to be straight up alarmed. And that's also the Jesse Jackson that I remember, right? I only met Jesse Jackson one time, and it was in the context of a local struggle in South Carolina that had to do with policing in schools. I only spoke a few sentences to him, but one of the things he made sure he said to me was, he was like, Professor, we got to try to win automatic voting registration for young people. And he was like, that's winnable. So what we going to do? So a very great tree has fallen, and we should definitely recognize that. And we should also think critically about his legacy too. Recognizing someone's weight and what they meant. I actually think the real way to do honor to people is to actually recognize all the parts, all the debates we have to have, what we appreciated, maybe what we didn't appreciate. But yeah, this is definitely a life who fought for justice his whole life. All right, y'all, we're going to check in with what's going on in Brazil. I got to go to Brazil for the first time, I'm embarrassed to say, last fall. And I had a really powerful experience thanks to an organization called Piauí, a really dope journalistic organization down there. I made all kinds of connections with journalists and different folks down there. And yeah, it really opened my eyes in a lot of ways. I mean, certainly I had, done some study and had some understanding, but I got to learn way more about Brazilian history and culture, and also really how we can look at the sort of Afro-Brazilian and indigenous experience down there as a lens through what's happening all over the world. And one of the main institutions that I connected with that was helping me do that is called Alma Preta. They're one of the best journalistic institutions in the world and one of the most largest Black journalistic organizations in Brazil. And so today we're going to hear a quick check-in with Pedro Borges from Alma Preta. He's an incredible reporter, and I really want y'all to hear this conversation because he's talking about the elections. We get into all kinds of things, the nature of the Black vote, and you can hear that full interview on Patreon, so you should listen. But the snippet we're going to get into here, he's going to talk about some of the policies that are becoming, controversial down there, or at least kind of like things that people are attacking and debating down there. And it's interesting because a lot of those policies are all, those policies there are being discussed at the federal level. Here, it looks, not that different than what you see in like New York and at the municipal level around taxing, around transportation. So yeah, I'm definitely paying attention to what's happening there and thinking about how it relates to what we're going through here. And here's a little snippet from my interview with Pedro. Sounds like a progressive tax policy that was already passed, my understanding, right?
Yeah.
Progressively taxed. So, if people above a certain income are going to get taxed more, people lower income taxed less. But apparently, opponents are coming out and trying to cancel this policy. Like, how's it working?
Yeah, so the rights in Brazil, they are not happy with this legislation that we have right now in Brazil, and was a big fight, big battle for Lula. So right now the question, the big problem is like the people who are rich in Brazil, proportionally they pay less taxes than that people that are poor in Brazil. And when we talk about rich people in Brazil, we are talking about white people. When we talk about poor people in Brazil, we are talking about Black people. and Lula changed it. So right now, people that are as we say, the 1% of Brazilian people, 1% of Brazilian people are gonna pay much more taxes than the people that are poor. Majority of Brazilian population. So that's gonna be that's something really powerful that poor people are really
1%,
happy with that, because it's gonna actually change their lives. And there are other projects that's being discussed in Brazil for this year that can even get Lula more popular. So we are discussing, for example, the possibility to everyone in Brazil have a free pass to use public transport in Brazil, so that people do not need to pay to use Brazilian subway, for example, to not pay to use Brazilian buses, for example. That's one Lula's agenda for this year. Other issues Lula is doing is the Brazilian deputies are trying to mobilize, is to create like a fund to develop the fight against racism in Brazil, a public fund that can even help some projects, some initiatives to fight against racism.
Let me ask you this. With the state of public education there, do you feel like Black people largely understand the impact that these policies will have on them?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think that in Brazil, we are still building a Black conscience vote, Mm-hmm. I think that, for example, when we talk about Black vote, we are still in the beginning of this public idea. We have definitely a Black vote. When we have the polls, we see that Black people are much more in the left side than in the right side. So Black people vote, for example, much more for Lula than for any Bolsonaro. But we have a stronger women's vote, for example, idea of women's vote than a Black vote in Brazil. I think that we are building it, and I think that some of these projects that are discussed, made, built to focus on Black people, I think that they are quite important to Black people to understand it, And racism in USA and in Brazil are sometimes different, how they operate. Mm-hmm. So yes, we are both countries that are quite violent against Black people. You have police brutality, you have a big problem of Black people in jail, and we also have that. But how the things work in Brazil is quite different. We do not have openly a KKK here in Brazil, something like that, We have some small groups like that, I think that Bolsonaro was even a chant of it, was something that changed the racial discussion in Brazil, because he's openly a racist one. He openly say racist things against Black people. All of these these actions, all of these ideas, all of these problems, I think that they are building a Black conscience vote, in Brazil. So we are already in a moment of Black's beautiful, people using their afros here in Brazil. I'm sure that maybe you have seen it when you came here to Brazil.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, in the places where I were, where there was a lot of Black people, you could see that the Black cultural pride is starting to grow. So that was a little bit from my conversation with Pedro. And you can hear that full interview on Patreon, so you should listen. And you should definitely pay attention to Alma Preta's journalism. All right, today's main interview is with Gilberto Porcidonio. I recorded this conversation last fall, and I've been so excited to bring it to y'all, but we just wanted to, find the right time and space to do it. And I just want to give you a little bit of orientation. Gilberto is a legendary journalist. He's also a researcher, a scholar, and he reports on culture in a way that shows that culture, when I talk about culture, I'm talking about art, right? Theater, music, dancing. Like, culture can be a battlefield. it can be an archive, and it definitely can be a survival technology, right? A technology of surviving, which includes, joy as part of that, right? So we talk a lot about how he approaches cultural reporting and, some of the things that have happened in his life that moved him in that direction as a journalist. And we also talk about policing, right? It's just like a major issue in Brazil. When I was there, the police, I believe at that point, had killed like 6,000 people in 1 year. And I think the numbers are shaping up similarly, maybe even worse this year. But one centerpiece of our conversation is his podcast, Chumbo Soul, which is an Audible original, and it is in Portuguese. So if you don't speak Portuguese, you may have to temporarily rely on our account of it. But what the podcast tells is the story of Black life under Brazil's military dictatorship through the lens of a soul music scene that was kind of called Black Rio. Maybe some of y'all are familiar with this, right? And this included like these Black block parties, thousands of people dancing with American soul music every weekend at a time when dictatorship was violently controlling public life. And so Gilberto explained how the dictatorship, first of all, was really threatened by that, right? Black people gathering, Black joy, Black style, Black politics traveling, across continents through music. And they were like, yo, this is something we actually have to target. And they actually targeted DJs and chased people down. So that was one component, right? And there's also this really personal layer because Gilberto's family story intersects with the dictatorship's violence, right? Forced removals, the destruction of Black neighborhoods, and the way the state really tries to organize and reorganize Black life spatially and socially. And yo, listen, I know Unruly Subjects listeners are smart people, you know what I mean? Shit, hopefully we got some Brazilians in our audience, you know what I'm saying? So I know not everybody might feel like you need this context, but I just want us to all move on the same page and to say that Brazil's modern political arc goes from military dictatorship into democracy, right? And is now a really intensely polarized democracy. And this interview kind of touches on that, but I just want you to understand that this is a country where the struggle over democracy is not abstract at all. It's fought through policing, through economy, through land, through race, through the conditions of life, just like here and everywhere else. So I hope you can hear that in this interview. And I think that's enough from me up front. So after the break, my conversation with Gilberto Porcidonio. This episode of Unruly Subjects is brought to you by Haymarket Books, which has loads of great left-wing titles, perfect for listeners like you. And one that I know you're going to feel is The Extended Universe, How Disney Killed the Movies and Took Over the World by Vicky Osterweil. A provocative history of Disney's rise to cultural dominance, The Extended Universe pulls skeletons from the corporate closet to decode the political messages hidden in all your favorite childhood movies. In The Extended Universe, Vicky Osterweil takes us on a quest to discover how Disney's Imagineers have made it impossible to reflect on the wonders of growing up without thinking of Disney's movies, amusement parks, and merchandising. Drawing on extensive interviews with filmmakers, screenwriters, union organizers, and Disney adults alike, Osterweil unearths reactionary political commitments and maleficent legal maneuvers so cartoonishly evil they would make one of Walt's own animated villains blush. As Natasha Leonard puts it, Osterweil is the brilliant, generous, and revolutionary guide we need to rethink cultural production today and kill the mouse inside our heads. Find The Extended Universe at haymarketbooks.org, where all hardcover books are 10% off every day. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. All right, we're here on Unruly Subjects. We got Gilberto Porcidonio. This is my brother I met in Sao Paulo. He's an incredible, legendary journalist there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just because I'm calling my brother my comrade, don't get it twisted. He's like a celebrity, you know what I'm saying? This cat is like doing serious work. Not only is he a journalist, he's like me. He's a researcher. He's a scholar, you know, and so he brings that to his journalism. And Gilberto, welcome to Unruly Subjects.
Oh, Chenjerai, I'm flattered to be here.
I want to get into a couple things. I want to talk a little bit about how you report on culture. I want to talk about police. But most importantly, I want to talk about your podcast about Black people and the military dictatorship. So I'm pronouncing it Chumbo Soul. Tell me how you pronounce it.
Chumbo Soul.
Chumbo Soul is an Audible original. It's produced by Radio Novelo, and it portrays the reality of the Black population during the dictatorship scene from the perspective of Black culture. It deals with removals, heroes, tragedies, people that are sort of like certainly not in our history books here in the U.S. And I think probably you put a lot of people right there in Brazil learned about it. It's 8 episodes. You are the narrator, and I know you also talk about your family as part of the story. So tell us a little bit about this podcast and what made you want to tell this story. How did you choose this story?
Oh, it's a very special work because they wanted to talk the story by a Black narrative, talking about how Black people survived using music as the guide for that, because there was a movement that were called Black Rio, that was Black block parties happening everywhere in the city, especially in the suburbs, where people dancing soul music, American soul music especially. It was a fever. It was happening. Thousands of people dancing every Saturday, every Sunday, and a lot of Black people together, only having fun and being inspired for that ambiance by the Black power, by shaft moves. Shaft was very, very important.
Shaft. Yeah, but Shaft was cool. But that sense of like agency, and at a time when you feel stripped of power, Shaft, that was one of the things that Black exploitation culture was drawing in a weird way, pulling on those aesthetics of like a Black militant tradition, so and you're saying that was part of it.
Yes, it was sold here as Black James Bond, like that. And the dictatorship looked for this scene and started to think, what's happening? How they're getting money for that? What they are talking about? And started to chase these people, chase the DJs. At the same time, my family, that's my family side, because I'm a middle-class man from a middle-class family, but just right now that they are a middle-class flat.
Right, yeah. We knew to the middle class, right?
Yes. They built it because they were very poor. They were from the slums. And my mother was in a slum called Praia do Pinto. That was in a noble zone, and they put fire in it and removed everyone from there to far, far away. Because it was this strategy of splitting families, especially Black families. It was a way that dictatorship used to work. Violent acts, official violent acts that were perpetrated against Black people, in parallel with their removing Black neighborhoods, especially the slums. And they were sent to orphanages, my father and my mother. And when they left these institutions, they reunited everyone to live together, to be raised by them.
Wow.
My mother and my father at the same time. And I told their story to Rádio Novelo crew, and they, we need to put them in the project.
You know, culture is never just culture, right? Whether you're talking about food, whether you're talking about music, whether you're talking about spiritual practice or art, it's always involving politics. Tell me a little bit about how you approach that, you know, in your reporting.
Well, I started this work when I became close to music stuff, to literature, to art. When I was a teenager, I used to be a vocalist in a hardcore punk rock and heavy metal band.
What?
In Rio de
Oh,
Janeiro.
man. That's where it started, brother. So we share that too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I formed a band with my school friends, and we were just living and having fun and being together. Very underground scene here in Rio de Janeiro, especially in the west zone of Rio de Janeiro. That's what stimulated me to be a journalist, because I wanted to record this stuff into text, into articles, into stories. So my first job was writing to some fanzines that we used to do. But when internet came, everyone was forming their own blogs and photolog. So it became a digital scene too.
I think that's so powerful. And I think in these times, it feels like where there's so much going on, you can actually forget about that part of life, right? Just teenagers just expressing themselves. Was there a moment where you realized that culture can really be a lens into politics?
Yes. Because I'm a great fan of Rage Against the Machine. That's my favorite band. And when I was younger, became obsessed with their lyrics. And I always heard that during our military dictatorship, the artists, especially Chico Buarque, they wrote lyrics talking about their reality, but in a way that the military people couldn't understand. That was my first contact with this kind of culture subversion. And I think, oh, it's great. But when I heard Rage Against the Machine, it wasn't in the subtitles. It was totally direct. Your
Fuck
face.
you, I won't do what you tell me. It was right there, top line.
And everything that they talk about, I've heard about the Black Panthers, about Mumia Abu Jamal, about this American reality that's very close to our reality too here.
You said that when you were listening to Rage Against the Machine and they were talking about politics, they were talking about the Panthers and they're talking about the whole American political context, you understood some of those things that were happening politically. And I feel like a lot of Black Americans, we're not taught and don't understand mostly like the history of Black people in Brazil or of Brazil, for one. And then two, I feel like a lot of people who come from either Latin America and the Caribbean here or from Africa, from the continent of Africa, sometimes they are also not as schooled in the history, right? Here, like, you know, there's a real sort of celebration of being of American and a kind of like patriotism, like America is the land of milk and honey, and they don't have that. There's not. I mean, a lot of folks have told me later, like, yeah, I had to learn that critical perspective after being here. So I wonder, do you feel like the way that you understood those politics is something that's typical of the Black Brazilian experience, or was this just peculiar to you? Were you just like an America hater? That's what they you know what I'm saying? Like in your punk rock band or what?
Yes, it's curious because I hated the politics, but I love the people. For us, when we talk about violence by police and about racism and violence in our communities, these ghettos, favelas, slums, how they are segregated from major city, what they call. That's an experience that I see that's very common in Afro diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
But especially here in Brazil, we have some specifications about how do we see race? Because we have 50 shades of blackness, if we could talk like that. Now they call colorism. This.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of Brazil is a racial democracy. We don't have racism here because everyone is mixed, and they use this speech to cover how racist Brazil is.
That sounds kind of familiar. So just if I'm getting you right, what you're saying is there's this idea that like, oh, we're colorblind and we're just a big melting pot and
yes,
mestizaje, everybody's all together, and that is actually the hammer that is used to crush down and knock down the reality where you're saying like it's really stratified, all these different gradations of color, and so you're experiencing it in that way, and then yet when you try to name it, you're crushed with the colorblindness and we're all one Brazil. And you're saying that's something that people recognize, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly like that, because people say they are colorblind, but they live in white neighborhoods. They only deal with white people, and their job is all their colleagues are white, and these middle class and rich people. And when you go to the poor people, they are majority black.
Mm-hmm.
People who work more, dies earlier, and get killed by police. Police behavior is totally different when they are depending in which neighborhood they are. We have these connections in a way that has these gray zones.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So it's more difficult to recognize at a first glance, but it's not impossible. Feel everything.
I think that's important for us to think about here because we're almost like, we had this sort of like decade of really kind of starting to name some of these problems explicitly. What could be called like the Black Lives Matter decade. Like you had, Trayvon Martin, these names, right? People in the streets, the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement into George Floyd. And in a way, we're now seeing the backlash to that, right? On an institutional level, like just a very kind of deliberate and intentional dismantling of the meager gains that were gained in terms of recognition. And it's interesting, my comrade Kianga Yamada Taylor, she said, right now she described this backlash as she said, we're having a counter revolution, but we never had the revolution, And so it's interesting to hear what you're saying about the way that reckoning, because I feel like we're now moving, the great humanist narrative is that, history just marches forward and bends toward justice. And I'm like, yeah, it don't feel like it's bending toward justice right now.
Yeah. And we saw it coming because here, especially in Brazil, when George Floyd case happened, everyone became anti-racist. All the businessmen, they wanted to show that they were anti-racist, but in a market language, if could say like that.
Oh yeah, we saw that too. Yeah,
like business. It was only business stuff.
Right. We're going to come up with the branding and all these other things. Yeah, that's why y'all saw that in Brazil and in Rio too?
Yes, especially because they were so shocked. And we have case like that every day, everywhere. Every day there's a black man being killed by police in a horrible way like that. And just because it happened in the United States, why? How it happened? Oh,
Yeah.
just like that. At the same time that this new anti-racist came and tried to prove how anti-racist they were, they vanished after that.
Right. I mean, what do you think was different about the Brazilian experience of this? That like maybe here, if I'm trying to apply like this African-American lens to what happened in Brazil, it's like, nah, it was different here.
Difference, commonly when a black person is stopped by police, he feels totally vulnerable. He feels afraid. Seeing police at the streets is not a comfortable situation. I have friends that they prefer being robbed than being stopped by police. Because when you're being robbed, you took a wallet, they took your cell phone, and they go away. When police stop you, you don't know how they're going to deal with you. So it's terrifying. Because we have here something that this paramilitary stuff inside police, we call militia, that it's the particular use of police to do their own stuff, their own way to earn money. They took some public services like transport, gas supply, tiny markets in some neighborhoods. They take it and use it to earn money for them. They use the police structure for their own businesses. That's more or less that we call militia here. And there's not only one type of militia. There are several. And they fight each other. In parallel, we have these drug cartels that are several and they fight each other. And we have this militia and drug cartels, and they are narco-militias, we call it here. They are a hybrid. And they are several too.
Oh my God.
So it's complicated. Very complicated. Yesterday, they killed a police chief in the middle of the street with machine guns because he was investigating PCC. That's a huge drug cartel in São Paulo. And they are huge. They are an enterprise. They have connections in Europe. They have connections with gun sellers around the world. They invest in this money, this cryptocurrency. They have billions in cryptocurrency and billions in the stock market. And they killed the police chief with machine guns.
Did you read the story about the police chief that was murdered in the newspaper?
Yes, I read in the newspaper at this morning.
I mean, you're talking to us about this, and you were talking about, this organization, this sort of cartel. I mean, is that dangerous for you to be talking about this?
So much because it's so common to talk about this here. It would be dangerous if I was talking about special people, special person doing special things. But in this general way, he was killed by PCC. We don't hide this here in this way.
And it's already being reported as well.
It's already
right?
being reported. And
okay.
It would be different. It would be different if I were in the middle of an investigation, in the investigation story. So I would take some providence first for my security, but it's not in this way, not this way. We have great colleagues that do very serious stuff, and they have some special ways to deal with that, their own security, but only when it's something more special.
Right. So when a police chief is killed, it feels like now they're going to bring down the repressive apparatus. But often, my guess is that is going to come down on ordinary people too. Like, you know what I mean? They're going to actually feel the price of that. Is that right? Or
exactly like that? That's exactly what's happening right now. There's already happening these actions, these revenge actions, because a time ago they killed a cop, and their revenge was on black population, and they killed a lot of people that had nothing to do with these criminals. So it's a very deep problem. We don't know how to deal with that right now, because these political connections that they have are very strong, very deeply. So it's tough stuff.
Right now, I feel like we're going into a really dark period in U.S. history. Like you're seeing, I mean, not even slowly, like people's families are being broken up. Capitalism was already in these neighborhoods breaking them up. And now it's, under this now it's fascism is really coming in and kind of trying to finish the work. What do you think that your story can teach people all over the world about how to survive this and what role culture plays?
It's curious because in this Black Real movement, they were not acting to be a political party. They just wanted to have fun. And have fun is revolutionary. When you try to bound your family, to keep your family safe and united, it's revolutionary. It seems to be simple, but it's revolutionary. But it's everything that they don't want you to do. And I think this kind of work, this kind of project shows that that you can be a revolutionary only being alive, only being capable of being alive, of being profitable to your own people. We always heard that Black people didn't build special stuff, don't do special stuff. Everything was made by the white people. And we see that we were crucial to build what we call civilization, especially. And if we look for our politicians who came from the Black movements, they talk about food, they talk about business, they talk about being able to walk on the streets without being harassed or attacked by cops. Basic stuff, but so basic that's crucial.
Oh my God. It's so good talking to you. We're going to keep this collaboration going and continue to be in community and continue to report and also continue to do the culture. You know what I'm saying? I heard through the grapevine there's a book about Georgia Ben coming out, the biography. I heard this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, my wife is writing Camille Viola about George Ben.
Come on, man.
Be ready.
You need that.
Maximum respect, Chenjerai.
Yes, supreme respect.
Thank you a lot.
All right, y'all. Yeah, that was my interview with Gilberto Porcidonio. We all got to get sharp on our Portuguese so we can really listen to his whole podcast. So we're gonna get to figure out a translation. We're gonna figure something out, But I hope y'all really enjoyed that. I always enjoy talking to him. He's got a great voice too, doesn't he? Oh my God, yeah. So listen, that interview was from last fall. So I just felt like, I wanted to check in with him. So I actually called him up, a few days ago just to kind of check back in and see where things are now, how have things shifted in the Brazilian political context. And, I wanted to see how my man was doing. So here's my little check-in with Gilberto. What's going on? Gilberto, how you doing, man?
Hello, Chenjerai.
Long time, man.
Yeah. But it's a pleasure for me to be here again.
Yeah, man. It's good to be with you, man. Last time we talked, I know they had just locked up Bolsonaro.
Yeah. Bolsonaro is in jail.
I don't know if you noticed, but we have a few things going on over here as well. But since it's been a while since we talked, I wanted to just kind of get an update. What's going on with you, man? How's the family?
My family is good. My family is happy. Is a very special moment because after we launched the podcast that talk about the dictatorship in Brazil and how it impacted in Black families, especially my family. And now people can hear this podcast, this audio series in all platforms because it's free now.
So the podcast is free, so now everybody can hear it. And now people are coming to know your family story.
Coming to identify with dads, knowing a little bit more. And so it's a very special moment and very powerful moment too.
Absolutely, man. I just need to figure out how to get an English translation so all our people over here can listen because we need that inspiration as well.
Yeah, we need to work on that.
I know it's carnival right now in Brazil. Are you come on, man. Are you getting out there, man?
Yeah, it's carnival in Brazil. Everything turns in politics. The first day of carnival was about Lula.
Right, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that, man. Given the political climate, was the music good? I mean, was the vibe? How was the energy?
Very good. And Lula was there, and the opposition went crazy, bananas. So they are a little bit angry now.
They were bothered. I see. So once again, it's like culture is back.
Yes, they're against because, but it was a very provocative parade because people interpreting Bolsonaro in jail, dressed as Bozo clown because he's a clown and Bolsonaro Bozo is so similar.
Bozo clown.
Bozo clown.
I like that. It reminds me a little bit of the Super Bowl. I don't know if you saw Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this sounds like it was more straightforwardly political, but the right-wing forces over here were in a complete outrage over Bad Bunny's performance. So much so that they knew about it beforehand and they created an alternative halftime show. Did you see that?
Yes,
I don't know if you saw that. I think we have a lot to learn from Brazil in terms of how to really wield that culture as a weapon, you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially in Carnival, because Carnival is mockery and accepting mockery. One of our ex-presidents, and he said after that, but it's Carnival, it's okay, it's democracy. But some of others, they didn't like being mocked.
All right. Well, Gilberto, thank you very much for this update. We'll keep you updated and really appreciate you taking time.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk with you again, Chenjerai.
Thank you. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at unrulysubjectspodcast.com. Unruly Subjects is produced in partnership with Row Home Productions. Boy, I'm proud of Row Home. Alex Lewis is Row Home's creative director. John Myers is Row Home's executive producer. Shout out to my wife, Sadaka. Shout out to my daughter, Yola. Shout out to my assistant, Carissa. Big major thanks to Gilberto Porcidonio. Yeah. His podcast, Chumbo Soul, is on Audible Originals. You know what I mean? And also shout out to Pedro Borges from Alma, Preta. Yeah, man. Our theme music was composed by Axel Kakutier. Alex Tatusian made our tile art. You got something to tell us? Some feedback? Call the Unruly Hotline, 215-436-9212. You can also text us at the same number. And you listen, you know what I mean? You can be anonymous if you want, but just know we might use what you send us on the show. Make sure you subscribe to Unruly Subjects wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show at Instagram at Unruly Subjects Pod, and my personal Instagram is at Chenjerai. Tell everybody you know about the show if you liked it. You know what I mean? We building something here. And yo, if you didn't hear last week's episode about ice flights with Gillian Brackel, you definitely want to check that out. She's the author of the article Ice Flights Are Getting Longer and Crueler, published by Mother Jones. And also, if you're enjoying Unruly Subjects, leave us a review. Peace, and we'll see y'all next week. Rohome Productions. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects.